Hello, everybody. This is Donna Anderson. I'm author of lovefraud.com, and today I'm here with Claudia Paradise. Claudia is a licensed clinical social worker in New York City, and she's going to be presenting a webinar for Love Fraud, which is called Empowering the Child Who Must Spend Time Alone with a Disordered Parent. So welcome, Claudia. I'm so glad to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Okay. So when parents are disordered, what effect does that have on the way that they treat their children?
Yeah. No matter how grandiose or confident a disordered parent appears, their core is one of chaos, dysregulation, and self-hate. They operate from a void and emptiness within themselves. When a person has a hole like this in their sense of self, their priority is always going to be to fill that first. I say first, they never get to second because they're always operating from this darkness. However, consciously or unconsciously, and it's both, they are bent on satisfying that void first. The void is a bottomless pit that can never be satisfied. They operate and exist trying to avoid at all costs being swallowed up by their own darkness. Because there is no fix for this disordered parent, they survive on the hits that they can get from anyone, anywhere. They're non-discriminatory. And that staves off minute by minute who they really are and how they are feeling. One of the, I think, misconceptions or my belief system is a cluster B personality disordered person does not feel. They are dysregulated. Sometimes they have so many feelings and they're disorganized, but it's not, when you get further down on the narcissistic spectrum, you can start to question, with sociopaths and psychopaths, if you will, their ability to feel. But very often, the narcissists, the borderlines are intense feelers with no organization.
Okay.
So because the narcissistic injury in the parent was a result of their own troubled childhood, they feel entitled to make it up from the world around them. Payback.
Okay.
Their child becomes a hostage and a captive for this performance. The child serves as a supply source that provides a steady source of attention and reflection that adds to the disordered parent's chosen narrative for themselves. I'm a great father or mother. Look what I created in this child. They're just like me. The disordered parent does not nurture or encourage independence or self-expression in anyone, let alone their child. In fact, a child will come to know pretty quickly that any expression of individuality is seen as a personal affront to the disordered parent. And, I don't mean to be dramatic, but it's experienced by the disordered parent as an act of war, essentially. The DOP, I call them DOPs, instead demand compliance and trap their child in what can be referred to as a double bind. For me, this double bind really gives a framework for what's going on here, although psychological theory doesn't really use it anymore. But a double bind is a dilemma in communication in which the child receives two or more conflicted messages, with one negating the other. The trap occurs when the child cannot confront the inherent contradiction and therefore can neither resolve or opt out of the situation. So it doesn't really matter what the child comes up with or what they do, because either response is wrong.
Right.
It's
Okay.
kind of like, this is a very mild example, but it's kind of like, the mother that gives their son two ties,
Mm-hmm.
and the son wears a tie to see their mother, and the mother says, why didn't you wear the other one?
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with the other tie? You can't win for losing. Now, with a narcissistic parent, it can be much more severe, much more intentional. As adults, we can hardly figure out what all this stuff means.
Mm-hmm.
So with a child, they don't have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
This type of communication causes suffering and psychological disorders in the child of the disordered parent.
Okay.
This common form of narcissistic abuse breaks down the already fragile and underdeveloped psyche of their child, spinning and confusing this child and causing the child to second guess themselves and lose trust in their ability to care for themselves. This enhances dependency on the disordered parent, and it creates a very malleable, dependent target for that parent. Yeah, one of the worst things I think a disordered parent can do to their child is fracture that child's ability to trust their own instincts.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So what are a few of the ways that this all affects the child emotionally?
Children of disordered parents are not motivated by development or evolving. They're motivated by survival.
Oh, okay.
They are groomed, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
They're groomed to minimize their sense of self, to make themselves smaller, and comply to the disordered parent's vision of the world. The results of pushing back can threaten their survival. This conflict can cause depression, anxiety, self-harm, addictions, in the child, just to name a few.
All right. So how will your webinar help parents, at least a reasonably healthy parent who has to send a child to be with this disordered parent?
Yeah. This webinar is going to provide a framework for what I referred to as the GEP, the good enough parent.
Okay.
We all know that the parent that's remaining is probably very hurt and fragile themselves. So this webinar will give a framework to understanding the impact that the disordered parent has on the child. The webinar will also provide guidelines for the good enough parent to right size their expectations of what they can affect and what they have to let drop by the wayside, because we can't control it all. The main issue for the good enough parent is to make sure that their child is safe and comes home from the night, the day, the weekend, whatever, is mandated. We'll talk about effective communication, how the good enough parent can communicate with the child so that the child can actually receive what the parent is telling them. We're going to give specific tools to the parent so that they can educate their child on how to assess a situation without questioning themselves and to trust their own instincts. We're going to discuss the environment that the good enough parent should be working on to create in their home to counter the effects of the disordered parent's toxic environment. And lastly, we're going to address the things that the good enough parent needs to do for themselves to be strong enough, not perfect, but strong enough to support their child through, this labyrinth, which, is ongoing and emotional and far from perfect. So, I mean, in a nutshell, there's so much more, but just to give it a recap. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Claudia, I mean, I know how important this is. I've spoken to so many parents who are just flailing, just trying to figure out how they can help their kids. And I know you have a wealth of information. And so I'm really looking forward to this webinar. I think it's really going to be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do it. And I'll just say one more thing before we close, that very often a parent, a victim of narcissistic abuse, can't mobilize to do these things for themselves. But somehow when they're watching their child be hurt, it ends up being a familial, corrective, emotional experience. So the child almost acts also in a different way as a conduit for the healthier parent to recover and do some healing also.
And that's really good
Yeah,
because I guess, healthy parents want to protect their kids, and as a part of that process, you end up protecting yourself or learning to.
absolutely.
Yes, that's great. Okay, well, this is terrific, Claudia, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Donna.